Joining us now, Jamil Jaffer, founder and executive director at GMU Scalia Law School. Jamil, Australia has very tight gun laws. They're going to try and tighten them up even more as a result of this terrible shooting. But it goes to show you that it isn't always gun control that presents these mass killings.
Well, John, that's exactly it. You've heard the Prime Minister of Australia talk about the need to do a gun buyback program and tighten the gun laws. But the real problem here is not gun laws. The real problem here is the rising tide of anti-Semitism we've seen in Australia, here in the United States as well, and the acceptance of this. We've seen attacks on synagogues there in Australia, multiple attacks. We've seen fire bombings of cars and the like. We're seeing that trend rise up here in the United States as well, with prominent conservatives giving space to people like Nick Fuentes. We can't accept that in our country. The Australians shouldn't accept it there. And that's really what this is about. This is not about gun laws. This is about people who are conducting violence. And no terrorist is going to hand back their guns in a gun buyback program. Let's be real.
Chris Minns, the Premier of New South Wales, we heard him there at the top saying that, fear and intimidation are not going to silence the Jews of Australia. But he also says that they're going to try and clamp down on some free speech things. I want you to listen to this and tell me if you think it's going to work. Listen.
We'll also make it very clear that horrific recent events have shown that the chant "globalise the Intifada" is hate speech and it encourages violence in our community. The chant will be banned alongside other hateful comments and statements made in our community.
So, globalise the Intifada will be considered hate speech and will be banned. First of all, how do you enforce that? And secondly, how do you make it stick? How do you make it work?
Well, this is exactly the problem with sort of banning speech. The issue is not banning speech. The issue is not allowing it to happen. So, for example, Nick Fuentes can say whatever he wants in this country. We have to take our own action to say these people are not acceptable. They're not part of the conservative movement. They're not part of what we believe. They're not part of what Americans believe in. And we have to reject out of hand. The role of the government, Australia wants to pass its own laws. That's fine. They can do what they want to do. But it doesn't strike me that the government passing laws against speech is the right answer. The right answer is for right-thinking Americans to say, this is not who we are. This is not who we are as Australians. If that's the case in Australia, it's not who we are as Americans. We reject that speech. We reject those people who support them. Look, there's a real problem within the conservative movement of endorsing this kind of behavior. We have to reject that out of hand. That's the key effort. It's not about government banning speech or guns. It's about individuals and groups taking action against people who engage in this kind of hateful behavior or terrorist attacks.
Dr. Reuben Kirkham is with the Free Speech Union in Australia. He says he's afraid that this effort at regulating speech could actually backfire. Listen.
The root of the issue is an intelligence failure, quite plainly in this case. There's also the issue of the government promoting particular causes that are anti-Jewish, which has probably inflamed racial tensions within Australia. But again, hate speech laws are not going to target the government, are they? So this is going to have nothing to do with the root causes of anti-Semitism. And I would argue it would make it even worse.
Nothing to do with the root cause of anti-Semitism. What do you think about what he has to say?
Well, look, conservatives have long been against banning speech in the media and the like, and I think that's the right thing. Free speech is an American value. It should be an Australian value. But at the end of the day, what you've got to do is you've got to take action against people within your own movement who are saying these things, engaging in this behavior. People talk about deplatforming. The reality is, if people don't want to hear that kind of speech, people should be, told, look, you're not going to get support from advertisers and the like. That's not deplatforming. That's people engaging in their own speech against people who are engaged in hateful speech. And so, look, I'm all about increasing intelligence collection activities, preventing people from engaging in these acts. I'm not for banning guns. I'm not for banning speech. I think it's a bad idea in Australia. It's a bad idea here in the United States. We need to condemn people who engage in that kind of behavior, reject them out of hand. The government's taking action like that is not the answer to this problem.
Jamil Jaffer. Jamil, thank you.
Thanks for having me, John.
You bet.